talking about culture and heritage. And I found it was so interesting what Nigel could say, that it would be very interesting to have one of our talk show with Nigel. So Nigel is the president and CEO of the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage, what you call, Nigel, WTAC. So Nigel, you've got a maximum of 20 minutes. First, to introduce yourself and WTAC, at the same time to tell us what kind of link you see between culture and heritage and tourism.
Certainly, and thank you again for asking me to talk to you today. It's an absolute pleasure. The only one I haven't said hello to yet is Andrew. Good afternoon, sir. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
I stayed quiet because I came in later.
There you go. There you go. I had no idea I was going to see you today.
I just told you something.
Lovely to see you. Okay, I'll start at the very beginning, I guess, in that I don't have an academic background and I don't have a culture and heritage background. So what am I doing as president and CEO of WTAC? We call ourselves WTAC because otherwise it's a mouthful to say everything in one sentence. So my background is very commercially based. So I've worked in very large tour operators, in fact, the largest independently owned tour operator in the whole of Europe. We used to send something like 500 million passengers away. We turned over close to $1 billion, predominantly long haul. We sold that business some time ago to Thomas Cook. And I then decided to leave the industry in terms of a full-time commercial role. I was a main board director at that company. So my life has always been in the commercial side of travel and tourism. I come from the dark side, where it is we try to make as much money as possible on the sale of products and services that we sell. I then started my consultancy 13 years ago. And I was asked by the Dutch government to spend some time as a consultant in sub-Saharan Africa, where they asked me to be one of their tourism experts on their export coaching program. So rather than giving physical money, actual cash to developing countries, the Dutch government, as do many others, the Swiss and the Germans, provide expertise instead of cash. So we were assigned different destinations to work with, and my designated country was Zambia. I also spent time working in Mozambique, Burundi, and Rwanda. It was a 7-year project, and my job was to work with the tourism minister, and at that time it was his team, his entourage, the tourism board, and small business owners in tourism to get them inbound tourism ready to receive overseas tourists. So I spent 7 wonderful years going backwards and forwards to those wonderful countries, and I have a very soft and passionate spot for Zambia, where I spent most of my time. And I guess my light bulb moment was when, whilst coaching these small business owners on how to run a business more effectively and how to attract international tourism audiences, I worked with a husband and wife team who were selling white rhino walking tours from Victoria Falls, and there were just 2 of them. And they grew their business 100%. So they employed 2 more people, which doesn't sound like a lot. But the light bulb moment for me was when I found out that each of those employees were responsible for feeding and housing 15 family members. So that was where the impact of what good tourism done well can have on local communities in parts of the world that desperately need that tourism revenue. So after my 7 years, I've done many assignments since, again, predominantly commercial. But the owner, the gentleman that founded WTAC, a gentleman called Chris Flynn, approached me a couple of years ago and shared with me his dream and his passion. And as the saying goes, he had me at hello. It didn't take him very long to persuade me to work with him. And he shared his challenges and what the problems were. And this is all pre-COVID. So he started WETAC. It's only 3 years old. So the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage is only 3 years old. And 2 years of that has been dealing with COVID. Why did he feel the need to start WETAC? What is WETAC and what does WETAC do? Okay, so to try and keep it very simple, because it can become quite complicated, our primary goal is to work with governments all over the world, national or regional, and educate them on the true value, both intrinsic but financial, of culture and heritage and its meaning to tourism. Why do people go to your destination for a holiday or for a trip? Why should they come to your destination? What is it about your destination that makes your destination truly unique? So Chris used to have a very senior position at an organization called PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association. It's the oldest and largest tourism association in the world. And it's headquartered in Thailand. And its primary goal is to increase tourism to the Southwest Pacific, Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, and the Americas. Anything that borders the Pacific Ocean, basically. But as Chris was in his director role, traveling around all different countries in the world, making presentations and lectures and attending conferences, he noticed that quite a lot of the world's cultural and heritage assets, now that's both tangible and intangible. A lot of the world's assets were actually quite fragile. And if you were coming from a developing country, the chances are you didn't have very much financial capacity to be able to manage and maintain and develop those cultural and heritage assets. And what Chris found was that they were becoming eroded. Many were becoming lost. And as you know, with an asset like that that's taken millennia to create, once they're gone, they are gone forever. They become extinct. We are losing 9 to 10 languages every year. Those languages are becoming extinct, finished, never to be spoken again. We think that's a real shame. And we think that tourism should be the custodian of cultural and heritage assets globally. So how do we do that? We work with governments to make them or assist them in understanding what the true value is of those assets. We provide education tools to do that. We also provide the capacity to run individual consulting projects with them to help protect and preserve either individual assets or come up with strategies and government policy to help maintain and preserve them for generations to come. Secondly, we are an association, so we rely on membership. People pay us to become members. Membership fees have been set very low, and they've been done that way for a reason. Chris wanted, within reason, anybody to be able to afford a membership. Membership fees start at $50 US, and no one will pay more than $150. So they're very, very reasonable. This is not a sales pitch. This is me telling you how we go about our organization. Thirdly, and something I'm very passionate about, is I'm responsible for our Knowledge Hub. And our Knowledge Hub is a place where tourist boards, governments, but tourism businesses and educational establishments can come and talk to us about the content that we hold, which after huge amounts of research, we know much of it is unique to us. When I first joined WETAC, I said to Chris, I now understand what WETAC does. Can you please tell me what culture and heritage in tourism actually means to people. And he said, you know, I don't think we've actually gone out and asked that question. So when I started, I contacted 107 of my closest associates all over the world. They are government tourism ministers. They are senior management, if not chief executives of tourist boards, large and small business owners all over the world in different facets of the industry, but also community members that have an interest in tourism, whether it impacts them positively or negatively. And I asked them one question: what does culture and heritage in tourism mean to you? To my surprise, I got over 100 different answers. Now that told me we have a problem. There isn't a recognized set of policies or instructions or dialogue that defines culture and heritage in tourism and what it should mean and what it does mean to people that rely on it. Going back now 2 years pre-COVID, governments all over the world, both developed countries but undeveloped countries, didn't truly understand the value of tourism. Since COVID, they do. Philip was with me, and so were Andrew at QTM. And what gave me great pleasure is that every single tourism board representative of a very senior level, including the CEO of Qatar Airways, stood up on that stage, every one of them, and said, culture and heritage will be the pillars upon which we build our future success. Words to that effect. Whether they truly believe that and truly know how to go about doing that, I question, because I'm not seeing much evidence and proof of that actually happening. They're saying the right things, but it's still a little bit early yet to see what happens in terms of delivery. But we are here to help and assist. So we've created now a range of courses for educational establishments, as I mentioned before, who are now coming to us and asking us for content, which we're happy to provide. You can't, when you're dealing with tourism boards and with governments, you can't call them educational courses. You have to call them either upskilling or knowledge sharing content. So they're more happy to listen, and they are even more, they're not happy to pay for it, but they can understand why it is so important to value what you have and protect it and preserve it for millennia. I've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, if my timekeeping is correct, and I will give you one example of our latest piece of work. We were commissioned by the government of Greece, in particular the Mayor of Athens, the Athens City office, to help them understand the true value of tourism coming to Athens. What does it mean? We were quite staggered when we found out during the initial research phases that Athens has never engaged with its local communities on whether or not they want tourism, how much tourism they want, what they want that tourism to look like, and they've never had a say or a stake. They are not considered stakeholders, and they've never had an equitable seat at the table. They will going forward, because the work that we've done is in a couple of areas. One, it's to demonstrate that if you do tourism well and you engage your local stakeholders, they can become and should become your greatest ambassadors. If you do not, they can become your worst enemies. Over-tourism is a perfect example. Local communities all over the world are pushing back against tourists. Another example is Venice. The government, the Venetian government, the Italian government, and the local Venetian government have been insisting they want very large 100,000-ton cruise vessels going up and down those very small canals, which we all know are actually shaking the foundations physically shaking the foundations of that city. But they believed that the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tourists that were getting off those boats were adding a great deal of value into the local communities and into local environments. That's what they thought. They were wrong to think that. After a significant study, a revenue capture analysis, it was proved that for every single tourist that gets off a boat, they leave roughly $9 behind. That's it. So what true value do those cruise vessels with thousands of people arriving every day actually deliver to the local communities and the people that call Venice home? The population of Venice, I believe now, is down to around about 35 to 40,000 people because they don't want to live there anymore. So I guess to sum up, there is a significant need to raise the awareness of why culture and heritage in tourism is critical today. It's even more critical tomorrow. If you governments do not invest in tourism, both in a positive way, trying to sort out over tourism, but also sharing that tourism around to less well-known parts of a country or a destination, to those communities that desperately need that tourism, those communities will close down, those villages and towns and smaller regions will shut. We've seen it already during COVID where their communities have had to go to big cities to find work because tourism has stopped for the millions of people that have relied on it for the last 2 years. And I just hope that there are positive sounds, there are positive noises, and there is positive speak and talk from governments all over the world about valuing culture and heritage better as we exit COVID, or as we start to come through COVID, should I say, more appropriately. We are here to provide the guidance at every single element and facet, from government right down to an individual within a community, to help them make the best impact they can to save, protect and preserve those assets that have taken millennia to create. And let's not forget, it's the people in those communities that have created those customs and those cultures and those heritages over millennia. Let's not see them disappear for good. When I travel, I want to see, taste, touch, smell different things. It's why I go on holiday. I'm sure you do too. So with that, I believe I'm on about 21 minutes, Philippe. So apologies for my going over very slightly.
Oh, this is great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nigel. Maybe I will start with the first question. This concept of culture and heritage are broad, very broad concept. We make a priority between the natural heritage and the human heritage.
Yeah, we know, we appreciate this is a global problem, and we are one very small NGO doing our very best to raise awareness through the platforms that we have. And now COVID is starting to change and allow travel, or now travel is being allowed. We will raise those flags and shout as loud as we can at as many events as is possible to do so. I guess to answer your question particularly, one of the challenges that we have when we go to different parts of the world is they say to us, well, it's okay because organizations like UNESCO are there to look after those assets. We know that that's not necessarily the case. UNESCO today have less than 1,200 World Heritage Sites. Now, to put that into perspective, when I spent my time in Zambia, Zambia has one. It shares that cultural and heritage asset with Zimbabwe. Can anyone tell me what that one asset is, what that one heritage site's called? Victoria Falls. is the only cultural heritage asset that's valued by UNESCO. To Zambia, they have a list of 4,022 assets they see as being culturally sensitive and important to Zambians. They have a cultural minister. They don't have the money or the skill set or the capacity to protect and preserve those. And we'd love to work with them because we have the skill set and the capacity. What we all need to do is to try and find the funding to be able to help them do that. And that's another one of our greatest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
That's both tangible and intangible.
Any question to Nigel? You see, Nigel, in front of you, you've got lectures, but even more directors and deans of institutes and university. How would you see, how could we complete our training and education in culture and heritage in our hotel schools and University of Tourism? Perhaps you saw some curricula of our education systems and programs, and maybe this point is quite weak, don't you think, though?
We want to touch both the travel and tourism industry, but there is also a huge amount of work to do in industries that are not related necessarily to travel and tourism. Culture and heritage exists everywhere. It exists inside your organization. It exists inside businesses. And you need to understand what the value of those assets are, whether they be your staff, your team, your locations, or what it is you teach. Now, one of the ways, because of COVID, and this is relevant to the point specifically about education, Philly. When we first started WeTac, and I joined the organisation about 2 years ago, we've been going 1 year. We only had 14 followers, 14 followers on LinkedIn. This month, we've just gone over 25,000. We have picked up those followers because we are hitting a note and a message that they're not receiving anywhere else from any other organization. And one of the things that gives me the greatest pleasure is if you break that down into the types of followers we have, the skill sets of those followers, the titles those followers have, and the industries they work in, the single biggest element of our followers are students from all over the world. Those that are currently in student learning programs or just come through student learning programs, whether they be degrees, masters, at college doing degree courses. We have the amount I see between 3 and 5 lecturers, professors, doctors of tourism every single day following our organization. That gives me a huge amount of positive feeling that there is a real desire to need to understand a bit more about why is culture and heritage important. We have been approached by and are having a number of discussions with different educational establishments on different continents in different parts of the world. And some of them are enormous because they have recognized the fact that they don't believe their own courses have enough culture and heritage content on them. Now, where you have a specific heritage master's degree, of course you do. But they may not understand how to necessarily weave in the importance of culture into that heritage program. But the vast majority of tourism courses touch or skim across the top of why culture and heritage is important. Something else I think is important to mention. There is a very small niche market segment in tourism called CHT, Cultural Heritage Tourism. cultural heritage tourism is just a very small market. I have never gone on a cultural heritage tourism holiday in my life. I've never spent 14 days wandering around museums, looking at architecturally wonderful buildings, being taken on and immersed on courses whilst in a destination. It's a very small and niche market segment. The reason I made the emphasis of the word in on the importance of culture and heritage in tourism is that whenever you go away, whenever any of my friends or family go away, and whenever of my colleagues in the industry go away, they will have some form of cultural engagement. It could be eating local food in a local restaurant. It could be having a chat to someone in a bar who happens to be from that local community. It could be going to watch a local traditional customer dance, attending a wedding, going around and looking at the Parthenon. That is a cultural experience. Everyone I know, especially if you work in travel and tourism, and certainly if you teach in it, will have cultural and heritage experiences while you're away. It's why we all travel. And we need to make sure that when people are educated about travel and tourism, why it is so important. When you we're talking to a very large organization at the moment called Black Travel Expo. And I'll share with you why that's important. The black and brown travel and tourism market in the US, it's black culture and it's black heritage. I'll start again. It's Black History Month this month in the USA. To help support Black History Month, we have given over our interview program, our platform, which is called 5 in 5, 5 questions in 5 minutes, all around the importance of culture and heritage. We've given over our platform this whole week to Black Culture and Heritage Week. And we've interviewed different people from different facets of the industry to share their stories on our platform. One of them is the owner of an organization called Black Travel Expo. Why is Black Travel Expo important? The black travel and tourism market in North America, just in the USA alone, spends $110 billion a year in 2019, pre-COVID, on leisure travel. 110 billion. They don't have their own trade show. Very few organizations, very few products, very few services pitch themselves to the black and brown traveling consumer in the USA. This research has been done by a global PR company called MMGY Global. One of their facets is travel and tourism. So they undertook a very large piece of research which showed the importance of just the black travel market in the US. Now multiply that out to the UK, the whole of Europe, and the continent of Africa. That travel market is absolutely extraordinary. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. Why is that important to culture and heritage? Because the vast majority of black and brown Americans came from somewhere else. They came from Africa. The vast majority of their roots are in Africa. They want to go and understand where their heritage came from, where their roots came from. The organizer of Black Travel Expo is in Cape Town at the moment, taking a group tour to people that whose ancestors were from South Africa and moved around on the ships from Ghana or West Africa. So that's why culture and heritage is important and should be important in every single holiday you think about, because it's why we all travel.
And back to training and education, what would you recommend where to start with culture and heritage in order to interest motivation of our students?
I think I'd like to open that question up to you. all of you, because you're also, you are educators. You understand the courses or the institutions you work with, and I'd like you to share with me whether or not you think, after what you've heard me say today, hopefully it's been of interest and you can understand why I'm so passionate. I'd be interested to hear from you if you think the courses that you have enough cultural and heritage content in them. And if not, do you think you should have? Because you'll have different types of courses to different type of, you'll have heritage only courses, of course you will. You'll have, my young niece, who's just turned 22, has just finished a degree in travel and tourism. And she said to me, Nigel, the only times anyone spoke to me about culture or heritage in my tourism degree course was when I was asked to go and think about my thesis, and I did a thesis on dark tourism. And I actually started to unearth all the issues and the challenges around dark tourism, but why culture and heritage is really important in dark tourism. You could argue all those Black African Americans going back to Africa to find their roots is dark tourism. It was a terrible, terrible time in world history, but they want to go back and understand. That's dark tourism. But dark tourism is a very small niche market. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to open up the floor to you guys and share with me if you think culture and heritage in your degree courses or your masters or whatever it is, the type of courses you run, has enough culture and heritage content in it.
I would like to share his or her experience.
Yeah, maybe I can give you a couple of inputs how we do it, because we have maybe a little bit special setting. We are a private school, so I have actual students from about 40 different countries here on campus. They are living together and studying together. And one of the start session is always, we are not teaching multicultural exchange. We are living it every day. And I think that opens the whole thing on the awareness, on the being ready to talk with other cultures. One of the statements I always give at the first day, the very first speak they hear on the school is, there's different cultures, and I underline different. There's no better or worse culture, so just different. Try to learn as future hoteliers how the different cultures work, how they work together, what are the benefits of the African, the Asian, the European, whatever culture. Actually, it's not one culture. It's, as you know, Nigel, there's hundreds of cultures all over around. By the way, I have an African tie today because I love this continent as well. So that's what we really do. This time we expanded as well. We had just our intake last week. We updated the intake week with an outdoor experience. So we spent an afternoon out in the forest, cooked in the forest and so on. And then it was really, really interesting. Some of the students never ever made a fire out in nature. They never experienced to be there. Coming to your topic, Nigel,
exactly.
Black women took the leadership and said, okay, come on, fire like this. You take the pot there. They knew how to do it. So that was a great experience for all of them.
I think, and that's fantastic. If you can imagine how many businesses all around the world have multicultural staff, it's all different, especially in the hotel industry. But think of industries outside of tourism. They have staff working on them from all over the world. Very few of those countries, very few of those organizations truly understand the value of the cultural assets they have working for them. Now, I do appreciate that diversity, equity, and inclusion has become a very, very big subject matter in organizations, in businesses all around the world. And it will become even more important, or should become more important, as we exit through COVID. I'd just like to see more of it at grassroots level when we're talking to young people about why you should enter tourism as an industry. I think we all understand that tourism is not the best paid job in the world. but it can afford you a very good career. If you do it well, you persevere, and you have a plan or a pathway. But many people use tourism degree courses. My young niece, who spent a number of years doing a tourism degree course, doesn't work in tourism. She just didn't know what else to do when she left school. So she went and did a tourism degree. Now we've lost an asset because I know how good she is. So what else can we all do to encourage the youth of today in schools or colleges to want to take the next steps in tourism through a process of very positive education? I obviously can't. I'm just one very small NGO with a global footprint and a global audience that is here, willing, ready, and able to help all of you, but also industries outside tourism. But for me, as I said to start this whole segment off, I personally am delighted that the single largest segment of followers we have are educators, doctors, professors, students, both ongoing, currently studying, and those that have left. And I get so many requests a month for internships, for answers, for requests for help and assistance with their theses. And we're a very small entity. We help where we can, and we can't help everybody. But I'm delighted that we get such engagement and such interest from those that you clearly have a passion for the industry I've loved for 40 years of my life. And I now want to be able to share that passion. I've left the commercial side behind, and I now want to give something back to make sure that people that come up through the ranks now do a better job than I did, and leave a long-term sustainable legacy of the protection and preservation of culture and heritage through better education and understanding of culture and heritage. And that's governments, tourist boards, businesses. They all have to take a part. They all have to own it. If governments don't own it, it's tough, because often governments are the ones with the budgets to help.
What about culinary arts? Because maybe when you start with the heritage of culinary arts all over the world, that can make a sense to further teach and educate on really how to operate cuisine and to make the cuisine. So what do you think, Lorena or Martin, maybe Didier, in your teaching process, how strong is the heritage of culinary arts before making the cuisine?
If I can give a comment, we are trying to use the attractiveness of food and the culinary experience to promote the cultural heritage of the less known destinations, because we had the idea that communicating through food, it can be a good starting point, because nowadays it's very popular we have foodies, we have foodborne, we have a lot of interest about food. But if we are able to connect food with the history and the culture of a place, you can start from them to raise curiosity and interest towards wider concept of culture and heritage of a country. Because we work also with the students that come from personal conditions of low culture, low intellect, low skills, and low education. And sometimes we think that the idea, the stereotype of cultural heritage is something that is just for educated people or for intellectual people.
Mm.
While probably this is a misconcept that everybody can appreciate a cultural experience because it touches the spirit, the emotions of the people. And so we have to close this gap to make culture and heritage more attractive to the people. And we also should help who works in the tourism sector or in the cultural sector or in the food sector to cooperate to valorize assets that themselves are not enough to attract a tourism experience, but linked and connected each other could represent an interesting tourism experience. For example, maybe I will not go to visit one building itself, but if around the building I can do a lot of other experiences, I can be more interested to reach that destination that is far from the beaten traces, a little less popular, but that can worth the visit if it's in a network, in an itinerary that
Lorena, I'll share with you this, and thank you for that. Are you Italian? I mean, your food speaks for itself. It's global. It's every time you open a packet of spaghetti, because we don't make spaghetti, right? We buy it. It's got an Italian flag on it, and you're waving the flag for your country. Well, I'll share with you a beautiful story. One of our 5 in 5 interview stories that we do one a week is one of them. We gave our platform to a gentleman called Juma, J-U-M-A, and it's Juma Makwela. And Juma runs an art walking or cycling tour around the townships of Cape Town. Juma is an artist. You call him a graffiti artist. He does murals on the walls, okay? He does it with permission. He's not a guerrilla artist. He's a proper, he does it with his local communities. And I'll share with you, because you mentioned, how can you weave in food into an itinerary? Words to that effect. What he does is he's got the consent from his local community, and bearing in mind this is townships, so we're talking about unsophisticated, not necessarily very well educated, not well constructed buildings. He has permission from his township to create murals, paintings on the walls of buildings, okay? I, as a tourist, can book one of his tours and I can go and leave my mark on a wall. I can start a painting off on one of those walls and he and his team come up with us, make it into a much better picture, one that is then left for years to come. Okay, so I now know I have my mark on that wall in Cape Town. He then takes you into the townships, one of the homes and the houses in the townships, to meet a wonderful older lady. And she teaches you to cook a native township meal. So you all stand around the table, you all prepare the food with her, you talk with her, you cook with her, you share stories with her, you make the meal together, then you all sit down and you eat it together. That to me is a perfect example of a small circular economy in action. As a tourist, I am giving my tourism dollar to where it needs to go the most, which is to a local community who probably couldn't survive without it or wouldn't have as better lifestyle if that tourism dollar wasn't coming in. Now imagine the pain they've gone through during COVID because of no tourists. So the being quite brutal about it, I was one of the people with my ex-commercial head on who was trying to strip out as much profit as possible from my company. And I was pretty good at my job. My company made a lot of money. It didn't leave a lot behind for the people that actually provide the products and services that my customers wanted to go and see and do. I'm now on the other side of the coin. I can educate and I understand the value of a genuine tour of, you can't have that experience anywhere else. As you said, having someone sit, talk, prepare a meal, as Vicky said earlier on, one of the ladies said, I'll do that, I'll light that fire, I'll take responsibility for cooking. She cooked her meal her way. Perfect. It's beautiful. And that's how tourism should be done. How much of that is taught on courses that you run? That's a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer, but it's about planting some seeds that can make a positive difference for the future.
Oui, Mathilde?
Yes, I think that what you highlight here is totally part of the experience that you get while traveling and while staying in a hotel. Because obviously, I'm running a master program in hospitality, so obviously my entry point would be hospitality. However, as far as I have a tourism background and as far as I study hospitality every day, I can see that now experience and lifestyle is key. But we do not travel to a hotel. We travel, first of all, to a destination. And if we want to enrich, if we want to enlarge, if we want to have an added value to the experience that the guest will have in a hotel, obviously we need to see the surroundings. And obviously we need to have to experience the destination. For me, it is absolutely closely linked, and it would be a terrible mistake from the hospitality sector to stick only to the experience inside the hotel. However, I must admit that in terms of curriculum, it's super difficult to add more tourism, because we stick on the strategy, we stick on the management component, obviously, which is key. We stick on the new topics, which are hitting our sector, like COVID, like technology, like new entrants on that field. So we have so many things to think about that sometimes we lack the purpose of travel, which is, first of all, the destination. So for me, there is a huge work to do that I try to do as much as I can in order to put tourism at the center, because the experience that you will have on site is obviously key and the most important one.
Yeah, thank you. You are right. One of the challenges is, and where I am in Cyprus, many of the hotels here are all inclusive. They actually don't want their customers going outside the hotel. That is such a shame, because there are some fantastic experiences within a quarter of a kilometre, half a kilometre from those hotels. There are some of the best souvlaki bars on the island where I live. But if you're in an all-inclusive hotel, you'll never experience one. So I do appreciate that many hotels have all-inclusive as a philosophy. It's what they do, and that's their business model. But you're absolutely right when you say, one of the questions we ask on our 5 in 5 interviews is there are 10 questions, and we ask people to pick 5 questions that they wish to answer. So there's no tricks involved. We're not talking to them, interviewing them and trying to trip them up. We want a positive experience for the interviewee and for them to share the best story they can with our viewers. We ask them to pick, one question is compulsory. What was the most special cultural or heritage experience you've had, or trip you've had? Some of the stories that they've shared with us have been extraordinary, but none of them have been about the business class seat they took to get to this wonderful destination. None of them have been about the lovely 5-star hotel or suite they stayed in, albeit very nice. It's all about the place they went, the things they saw and did, and the food they ate and the people they met. It should always be about place first.
And sometimes about the weather conditions, because it's obviously key.
I agree. Hey, you can have a wonderful meal inside a hut.
Thank you, Nigel. It's good to hear that we share common, so many things in common.
I do appreciate the challenges. It's we work in one of the largest industries in the world, 1 in 10 jobs globally. GDP, some countries are 70–80% GDP. They rely on tourism. We've all got a very big job to do. It's how can we make the experience better for our customer, and for this particular audience, how can we make the experience better for our student or the person who's educating those students? Mm-hmm. Because you are all doing, within reason, you're all doing my job. You're educating them on different facets of the tourism industry, why they should get involved in tourism, why is tourism a wonderful industry to be involved in, and why should you make a career out of it and spend lots and lots of money being educated while you're trying to find a career path. So we've all got a mission, and if there's anything we can do to help you, we have a wonderful relationship with Philippe and Xavier. Xavier, thank you, AMFORT. I know there's more we can do together. But if there's anything else additional you can think of after this conversation, I'm more than happy to help.
And today it was the first step. Thank you so much, Nigel. It was very wise and expert and generous and inspiring words that you said. So thank you very much indeed.
It's okay. And, if I could finish on one last thing.
Yes, sure.
I appreciate today I'm talking to a whole raft of academics. I am not an academic. One of the challenges we have at WETAC, and one of the reasons that we exist, is we identified something called bridging the gap. I have many conversations with academics in different parts of the world, and sometimes I struggle because I'm not of that background. I have a commercial mind. I know, and I'm also an educator, but not to the degree that you are. It's how can we translate what you know, what your organizations know, and how you teach the next levels and the next generation of people to come up and be better than we were and we are at what we do. My job, part of my job, is to take the academic aspect and angle, translate that into a language that a person who's a sole trader running a business, that lovely husband and wife team who are running a barefoot white rhino safari in Victoria Falls, how can I take what you know and the way you speak about it and share it, translate it into a language he and his wife can understand and use? We call that bridging the gap. Now, in our team, we have a number of academics, data researchers and analysts that work with us and for us, but they also speak our language, and I'm talking about a commercial language. So we work with governments to try and take academic documentation and research papers, make them understandable to a non-academic and commercial, non-academic mind, to turn them into commercial viability. So that's something else that we do to assist.
Good, excellent.
And I think we're nearly on the 1 hour.
Any reply to Nigel? Any one of you? No. So thank you again, Nigel, and thank you to join AMFORT. And as I've told you, you're invited to apply to the board of AMFORT if you wish so, and we know that we can build excellent bridges between your organization and our organization, and we're really so happy to promote WITAC, and hope you will promote as well AMFORT to your community. Thank you so much.
We do, Philippe, and thank you all for your time and attention and the questions. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much, and best wishes for the rest of your afternoon.